And I want to talk a little, connect this to the Parsha. A very fascinating idea from the Rebbe connects to the Parsha from multiple directions, as we shall see. But in order to understand this idea from the Rebbe, we have to first read a little piece of Gemara. The Gemara I'm about to read, it's from Saklas Baba Basra. From Perek HaMoicher Sasfina. So you have over here famously, you have what's called the Havayis of Rabbi Bar Chana. There was an Amoira, his name was Rabbi Bar Chana. Rabbi Bar Chana was a nephew or great nephew of Rabbi Chia. He was an Amoira. He was born in Bavel, and eventually he went up to Eretz Yisrael and he studied under Rabbi Yechanan. And the Gemara tells us a lot of fascinating stories. What's a better word than fascinating?
Detail.
No. Stories that are crazy stories, bizarre stories that he claims to have witnessed. It's two blot in the Gemara that tell us one blot or two blot that tell us what's called many different stories that he claims to have experienced. Now, according to most Mefarshim, these stories are not meant to be understood literally. They're all mishalim, they're all metaphors, and therefore there are many different. Many of the Mefarshim try to figure out what are the messages that Rabbi Bar Chana is trying to tell us.
Fantastic.
Sorry? Fantastic, yes.
Fantastic is the word.
Fantastic stories, correct.
Which daf?
It starts on Ayin Gimel Lamed Aleph. So one of the stories he said, Zimna Chada Hava Kasdinon B'Madbra. At one time, he says, we were traveling in the desert. V'Islavi Bahadan Ahutaya. There was an Arab merchant. Rashi says a Seicher Yishmael, an Arab merchant, who accompanied us. And then he says one story about this Arab merchant, but then he says, Amarli, the Arab merchant, one day this merchant tells me, Ta, come, Ach V'Ilach, I want to show you Meisei Midbar. I want to show you the dead of the Midbar. So Asli, we went, Chazisino, and we saw them. So they saw lying on the floor of the desert. They saw the dead people of the corpses. Vidamu, they seemed kiman de mifsimi. They looked like they were drunk. As the Rashbam, actually I said Rashi, it's Rashbam. The Rashbam says that their faces, like someone who was drunk, their faces red and shiny. Their faces were red and shiny. Vigonu aparki, they were all lying on their backs. One of the corpses, it had knee. Instead of his foot set straight, his knee was up. This merchant, he passed beneath the knee, and while he was riding on his camel, and his spear was held up. So can you imagine we're talking about 15 feet or 20 feet. Right? And that's how, in other words, trying to bring out how incredibly tall and how incredibly large these bodies were, that his knee was up and he was able to pass under it with his camel while holding up his not a sword, a remach, which is even bigger, a spear. Yeah. Paski chad karna de tchilta, de chad minayim. So Rabbi Bar Chana says, I cut off the corner of the tchilas, of the tzitzis, of one of these people. So the way the Rashbam explains it, the way the Gemara explains it afterwards, there's a machlokes in Masechtas Menachos between Beishamai and Beisilul about tzitzis, how many strings we have in tzitzis. So Rabbi Bar Chana figures, this is perfect, let me cut off one of the tzitzis, I'll bring it back to Bezdin, we'll examine it, and we'll know what the halacha is like. But as soon as he cut it off and took it, he wasn't able to move. They weren't able to move. Amar Li. So the merchant told me, Dilma shaklas midi minayu. Did you maybe take something from them? Ahadre. Give it back. The gemidi, because we have a tradition, the man de shakal midi minayu is someone who takes something from them. Le mistagile. Isn't able to move. In other words, got stuck in their spot. So Asli, ahadarte, Rabbi Chana says, I returned it, v'hadar mistagile. Hadar mistagil, and then we were able to move on. That's the story that's in the Gemara.
Fascinating.
It's obviously a puzzling Gemara. You want to say a fantastic Gemara on many levels. What does it mean? What's going on over there? So there's a Rishima from the Rebbe. You know that after the Multamos, they found in the Rebbe's desk some notebooks with some Chilush Torah the Rebbe wrote decades beforehand. And there's one of the pieces the Rebbe talks about this piece of Gemara. Apparently, the Rebbe wrote it in order to send it to his father, because the Rebbe left the Soviet Union in 1927. The Rebbe's father was arrested in 1939. So there was 12 years, and then he was 5 years in Galus, and then the Rebbe's father passed away in 1944. But for the 12 years that the Rebbe was during those years, the Rebbe was in Berlin, the Rebbe was in France from 1927 through 1939. So during those years, they would correspond. The Rebbe and the father correspond by mail. And what do you think the correspondence was about? It wasn't about the weather.
Sure.
Unfortunately, we don't have the letters that the Rebbe sent. Probably was all destroyed by the Nazis when they entered the city. But the Rebbe, he saved all the letters from his father, and they're printed in a sefer called L'Kutei Levi Yitzchak. All the letters are filled with Kabbalah. The Rebbe's father, long letters. But once in a while, the Rebbe's father will, he mentions the things that the Rebbe wrote to him in his letters. So we don't have the letters the Rebbe wrote. So one of the letters from Tafrei Sadik Vav from 1936. So the Rebbe's father thanks him for sending that piece on this Gemara about the merchant and the Meisei Midbar. So probably 2 + 2 = 4. Probably that this was the piece that the Rebbe wrote and sent off to his father. But it's in the Rebbe's notebooks. The Rebbe says like this. But in order to understand what the Rebbe is saying, we need to first back up a little and talk a little more largely about the story of this week's parsha and the Meraglim. By the way, you realize the connection to this week's parsha, both the Meraglim and also Tzitzis, which is the end of the parsha. So we have from both sides
But the
connection.
Gemara talking about the Tzitzit, when he put it back, he put it together or just throw it on the floor?
It doesn't say, but
Doesn't say.
The story of the Meraglim, the story of this week's parsha, is arguably one of the most also puzzling and bizarre stories in the Torah. The Yidden, the Jews, they send off spies to Eretz Yisrael to find out what it's like. The spies come back, and they tell the Yidden, Chazaku mimenu, we're not going to be able to go in. They're stronger than us. As the Gemara says in Soita, Chazaku mimenu, they're stronger than Hashem, Kaviyachum. This is a nation of Yidden that experienced Yetzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yamsuf a little more than a year ago. They experienced Matan Torah a year ago. It's not to say even that they experienced would be an understatement. They lived a miraculous existence. They woke up that morning. What did they eat?
What?
They ate the mun. What did they drink? They drank from the Ve'er of Miriam.
They didn't change
The
clothes.
clothing that they were wearing was laundered by the Anani Yakovid. And these are the people who are saying that it makes no sense. And also, we also know that these Yidden were on a high madrega. So they're there.
Makes sense.
The Gemara says, the Pasuk, Tehillim, Isfu li Chasidai, Karisei Brisi Ali Zavach, is the Deira Midbar, the Chasidai. What does it mean? So the Alter Rebbe explains, and the Kutei Torah, the Alter Rebbe explains, the Rebbe expands upon this in many sichos. What were the Yidden doing the whole time in the Midbar? They didn't have to work. They didn't have to worry about Parnasa. What were they doing? They were davening, they were learning Torah, they were being mispoided, they were being mispointed, connecting to Hashem. And suddenly they find out that they have to go into the real world. They have to get jobs. They have to deal with money. They have to plow fields. They have to harvest fields.
No koilim.
They had no interest in it. No interest in it. Not only that, they were very scared of it. Very scared. They were saying, what's the lashon of the pasuk? Eretz ichelas yishveha. It's a land that eats up its inhabitants. The Eretz, the Artzius, the Gashmius eats up the people alive. You can't be there and survive and be a Yid, and be a Chassid, and be a spiritual person. That was really what was going on.
The Nisim saw that.
And what did Hashem say? What?
Only the Nisim, and they
right?
tried to...
It's another reason, the Meraglim who went with great people. It's a Shak Sherem. Maisha didn't pick
ראשי העדה.
So,
Okay.
bottom line, what happens? What did Hashem tell them? You think into it. What is the punishment that Hashem gave them?
They stay in the middle
Stay in
for
the
40
middle.
years.
No, but that sounds like a terrible punishment. But at the end of the day, really, that's what they wanted.
And they got what they
They got
wanted.
what they wanted,
It's not a punishment.
right?
But they don't want it to do that
ultimately,
there.
ultimately, it was a punishment. But the bottom line is, this is what you want. This is what you'll get. Okay, Tapchem, your children, they'll go in. And this was a very high madriga. These people were on a very high level. These were people who were completely and totally detached from Gashmias, had no desire for Gashmias. And once we understand this, let's look at the story again. So Rabbi Bar goes off in the desert, and he wants to see Meisei Midbar. Which, by the way, it's interesting. Why do you call them Meisei Midbar? The dead people of the Midbar. Other you can call them by other terms, by other names. Der Moshe, the Der Yotzei Mitzrayim. The word Meisei, Mem Sof Yud, the Rebbe says, also can be read as Mesei, as like Mesei Mispar. What does Mesei mean? Mesei Ma'at. Mesei means people. Mesei Midbar means these are desert people. What do you mean the desert people? What is a desert? A desert is a place where there is no work and there is no homes, there is no cities, there is no civilization.
It's nothing.
Yeah, these were desert people. Sorry?
That's with the Samach, no?
No. What's up?
You say?
Yeah, Mesei Ma'at, Mesei Mispar. That's what's up. So Rabbi Bar Chana goes and he sees them. And what does he see? He sees that they're drunk. What do you mean that they look like they're drunk? We know it says Nadav and Avihu, they were drunk when they went into drunkenness represents the idea of Nichnas Yayin, Yayin, Yatsa Soid. We know that Yayin and Soid is the same gematria. They both have the gematria of 70. The secrets of Torah are called Yayin. They were drunk. They were drunk on the deepest mysteries of Torah, the deepest secrets of Torah. That's what they were. They were lost in the paradise. Viganu aparkid. They were all lying on their backs. What does that mean? If you're lying on their backs, that means that their face, their pneumius, is looking straight up at Hashem. They were constantly in that state of. These were huge people. They were huge people. They were drunk with the secrets of Torah. Their pneumius was directed towards Hashem. There's a machlokes whether Deir HaMidbar, whether they have a chelik ba'elam haba or not. So one opinion we mentioned earlier, opinion which is that of course they have a chelik ba'elam haba, because it says Isfuli Chasidai Kersebris Yalizavach. That these are Hashem's Chassidim. Hashem says gather them for me. There's another opinion, the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, however, that they have no chelik ba'elam haba. The Chelik in Megala Amuki says, Rabbi quotes this. What does it mean Elam chelik ba'elam haba? That they're higher than Elam haba. That these were people who were so high that for them Elam Haba isn't even a reward. They're higher than Elam Haba. This is how great these people were. One of these people, as mentioned, their foot was up. And this merchant, what is a merchant? Keep on talking about this merchant. A merchant is a Yid who went into Eretz Yisrael. How is that? A merchant uses money, gold and silver. And what is a merchant is constantly transferring property from one ownership to another ownership. That's what a Yid does. Every time we do mitzvahs maisius, every time we do a mitzvah with a physical object, what we're doing is we're taking something from the Rishus Harabim and transferring it to the Rishus of Hashem. And we do so using our gold and silver, which as we know, gold and silver represent Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. So that's a merchant. A merchant is someone who's actually involved in mitzvahs maisius. Not the Meisei Midbar. The Meisei Midbar were not merchants. They were not involved in mitzvahs maisius. That was their whole point. They stayed in the desert. They were not involved in Gashmis. They were not transferring things from this world into the next world. They were sitting on learning Torah. So this merchant went underneath the foot. Went underneath the foot. What is the foot? The foot represents the lowest part of the body. This merchant, riding on his camel, which means riding on his Yetzer Hara, riding on his Nafsha Bahamas, holding his Reimach, holding his spear. What is the spear? The Zohar tells us that the Shema has 248 words, which is our Reimach. The Shema is our spear. The Shema represents Mesiras Nefesh. In other words, we have this Yid, this merchant, this Yid who is involved in doing mitzvahs maisius, with everything, including even with Mesiras Nefesh. At the end of the day, he doesn't even reach the foot. He doesn't even reach the foot of the Mesei Midbar. To put it in different words, the merchant's good day isn't as good as the Mesei Midbar's lowest day. The Yid who goes into Eretz Yisrael and is busy doing mitzvahs ma'asiyos, planting his field, harvesting his field, truma, meiser, mezuzahs, maika, all the mitzvahs, is nowhere near the level of Mesei Midbar. When Rabbi Barachana sees this, he's like, this is crazy. These people are so great. He wanted to adopt a little of that avodah for himself. So what does he do? He cuts off the tchelas of one of them, and he wants to hold on to it. What is tchelas? Tchelas is the color of the sky. Tchelas shares the same root as klois hanefesh. The idea of tchelas is that this desire to leave this world, to be above the world and beyond the world. He cuts it off a little, and he puts it in his pocket. And then he can't move. And the merchant tells him, we have a tradition. And it's a tradition. It's not something which makes sense, it's a tradition. That if you take something from them, you can't move. We know the milah of Yidden over here is that we are called Mahalchim. Not Oimdim. With all the greatness of the people of the Deir HaMidbar, they're not Mahalchim. To become a Mahalach, to move, is only through mitzvahs ma'asiyos. So drop the tchelas and leave the Midbar and go back and do some mitzvahs. That's how the Rebbe explains this piece of Gemara.
It's nice.
This is mamish what we're talking about in Tanya over here. The Mesei Midbar, these were people who got stuck in the Shilia. They got stuck in the placenta. They were they great? They were the greatest. Because you remember, when you're in the system of worlds, what's the greatest is Torah. Torah is higher than mitzvahs. Someone who's doing mitzvahs are in the hay of Malchus and Torah is in Zah. Someone who's doing mitzvahs, again, can go under the foot, doesn't get anywhere. But ultimately, where is the Tachlis HaKavana? Seif Ma'aser B'Machshava Tchila, no Tchilasan B'Seifan. The Kavana is Nafka Mitzvahs Ma'asiyos. The Kavana is to go into Eretz Yisrael, to do mitzvahs, to make the world to der b'tachtonim, and that's where everything really is at.